What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Between the Lines Sports Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Blair, and my other host here is Patrick. We're going to recap our podcast from last week, talk about the week 2 in college football and week 1 in the NFL, and then we will dive into this upcoming week of college football and upcoming week of NFL. All right, I think our first game we had slated on here to talk about was the Austin Peay versus Tennessee game. What do you have on that one?
I mean, at the end of the day, Tennessee won the game. It wasn't pretty. Didn't play well at all for sure. Some things that probably went into that. I mean, with 10 minutes before the game, there was a lightning delay, so your routine gets thrown off. They don't run through the tee. They kind of get amped up to play the game, and then you have to wait again. So that might have contributed to the slow start. I mean, there's a number of things. They didn't play well, but at the end of the day, got a W. Defense, first string defense wasn't going to give up anything to Austin Peay, and moved the ball enough, kind of strung a couple of drives together into the first half and the beginning of the second half to get the scores they needed. And then, didn't play well, but at the end of the day, you got to win. I mean, there's a number of reasons it could have been because they're looking to next week, the circumstances. So people freaking out probably just need to chill because it's an FCS opponent. And I mean, I'm sure everybody's probably had an instance where they overlooked or did something at any point in their life. So, I mean, it's not really that surprising. I was kind of surprised that they didn't take care of business, but at the end of the day, like I said, it's a win.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on it there. I mean, the win's the most important thing. Um, we had some passes that were dropped, and then some passes that were dropped but weren't the best throws. So, if that's the type of game to have those kind of mistakes and kind of play like that, that's the team to do it against. I don't think, hopefully, but I don't think we'll play like that again. I think that might hopefully be our worst one of the year, just an overall, just kind of going out there and kind of going through the motions. It seemed the defense played pretty good. In the upcoming week, hopefully we get going a little bit earlier on offense. We've kind of been slow the first 2 games, but hopefully they make a turning point this next week and kind of get rolling. I did see one stat on X, the old Twitter, saying 33% of Joe Milton's 21 incompletions on the year have been wide receiver drops. And it says, turn those 7 drops into catches. Milton's stat line reads as follows. He's 49 of 63, 78% completion, 619 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So, I mean, every quarterback is crucified based on their stat line. But, I mean, you look at that stat line, we're talking about 2 different quarterbacks, basically. So, it's not necessarily the receiver's fault either. I mean, he's got some balls that he could put in a better spot, but I think we'll move forward with it and get better each week. All right, the next one is Ole Miss. Go ahead.
You said Milton was 49 of 63?
That's what he would be if those 7 drops were.
I got you.
Yeah. He would be 49 of 63, which is
the game probably goes a little different on Saturday if Brew catches the first ball. I mean, it wasn't a perfect throw, but it was on his back shoulder. And I mean, if he's going to be an NFL receiver, he needs to catch that ball. So if he catches that, it might be a completely different game. But that kind of started it as like Joe being a little shaky because then he wasn't hitting every pass perfect. And obviously that can just start your day where you don't have that confidence. You feel like you're out of sync a little bit, and then a few more drops and you get what you got. So there's some blame both ways, receivers and quarterback, but they definitely need to step it up and be in sync this week. But I think they will.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, our next one is Ole Miss versus Tulane. We talked about this one last week about, both of them being ranked top 25 matchup. And then if Tulane were to win this one, their schedule is very favorable that they could possibly run the table. And you talked about, if a group of 5 team gets a chance in the playoffs, this could possibly be that team. Didn't end up going that way. Like you said, we talked about it earlier. Their starting quarterback didn't play, and they had a lead for a good little bit of the game. And then second half, Ole Miss kind of opened it up on them. And, who's to say if their quarterback was there if it wouldn't have been a different outcome?
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss started strong. That 3-play, 75-yard drive, they scored a touchdown in like the first 48 seconds. So they definitely started strong and they finished strong. But there's kind of a lull there in the middle. They got down 17-7, which was surprising given that their Tulane's quarterback was injured because he was one of their big guys last year along with Tyjae Spears. So to not have him and still be pretty successful on Ole Miss in the first half was impressive from Tulane, but Ole Miss really kicked it into another gear in the second half. I think they outscored them like 26-3 and just totally dominated the game in the second half. So Ole Miss looks like they're carrying it over. Their offense is strong, able to move the ball pretty well, and the defense played pretty well on Saturday too. So I was impressed with that and interested. They've got some big games coming up pretty soon. I mean, they play Alabama next week, so that'll definitely be an interesting game given what we've seen from Alabama. So Ole Miss is looking strong, and I think Tulane's still going to have a decent season too.
Yeah, I agree with you. They both look like, I mean, right now it almost seems like the West and the SEC is kind of up for grabs. Alabama's not playing their typical game. It doesn't seem like LSU doesn't look real good. Texas A&M, who we thought was going to be kind of a surprise team for a lot of people, they lost. That's actually our next game, Texas A&M versus Miami. They ended up dropping that one. I think we both thought Texas A&M was going to win, but Miami came out on top, and maybe Miami's better than we thought they were, and or maybe Texas A&M isn't as good as we thought they were. I'm not really sure, but what do you have on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think these are two teams that are probably going to finish up somewhere around 8-4, 9-3, something like that. I think they're both pretty solid, but they definitely have some deficiencies and some problems too that they're still working on. A&M started the game really strong. They blocked Miami's first punt, had a short field, scored an easy touchdown. Then they got the ball back, went right back down the field and kicked a field goal. And it looked like they were going to be in control, but then Miami responded. They pretty much did whatever they wanted, moving the ball through the air the entire day. I think they had over 400 yards passing, and A&M wasn't able to get to the quarterback, wasn't able to stop the passing game. So they kind of just took over in the middle part of that game, and in the second half stretched it out to where A&M wasn't going to be able to recover. So pretty impressive performance from Miami. A&M's offense looked really strong. I mean, Evan Stewart had over 100 yards receiving for the second week in a row, but the defense is really struggling to looks like they're picking up where they left off last year, giving up a lot of yards and giving up a lot of yards through the air. So we'll see where both teams go, but I was impressed with what Miami did because, like you said, I figured A&M would win a close game, but Miami kind of dominated from the second quarter on.
Our next one was Texas at Alabama. This was kind of a revenge game for Texas, which really they had all the chances in the world last year to win it. They brought a lot back other than their top two running backs, and then Alabama obviously always has the talent out there, brought a lot of people back, but they lost Bryce Young, who's he's been their bread and butter for the past couple of years now, and they have a quarterback now, Milroe. Nobody really knows too much about him other than he's athletic. So we got to see a little bit more of him this past week against Texas, kind of what he brings to the table. If he gets out of the pocket, he can make some people miss and he can make some noise for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive how they played. I mean, the thing from the game last year that kept Texas in the game was beating up Alabama on the lines of scrimmage, especially the defensive line. And a lot of the same thing happened this week when they played. I mean, Texas was able to move the ball pretty effectively on offense, especially through the air. They were able to give Ewers time, and he hit some of those deep shots, and he got some strong receivers with Mitchell and that big tight end number 0. I mean, they've got some solid playmakers. So they look like a strong team. Alabama, still strong, but I mean, the quarterback play leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, Milroe, when he's running around, I mean, he can make some plays. He's hard to tackle, but in the pocket, I mean, he really stares down his receivers. He struggles to connect on some passes over the middle of the field. He does have a nice deep ball when he's on time, but just not the quarterback play we've been accustomed to seeing from Alabama the last 6 or 7 years. So I still think they'll win their fair share of games. They're still very talented, but just a little surprised at how it went down, but not surprised Texas won because I think right now Texas is the better team.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, our next one was Nebraska versus Colorado. I think prior to week 1, Nebraska was like a 7-point favorite going into this, but then after Colorado beat TCU and Nebraska dropped an opener, Colorado actually moved to a 3-point favorite. So, I mean, you kind of figured it was kind of going that way. We talked about Colorado already this year. They look like they could be for real. They definitely have the athletes. Dion brought a lot of people with him. Travis Hunter and Sanders, Dion's kid, we said obviously could play probably anywhere right now. Um, what they're doing is it's special. It's very hard to go into any program, whether it's Power Five or whatever, to make a winning culture right away. And it almost seems like they're doing that. Which I mean, TCU, we don't really know how good they were, but they were kind of overhyped going into the season because of last year. And then Nebraska, didn't think they were too good of a team. So I think Colorado has Colorado State this week, but then they'll play Oregon. I think that'll be a good test for them and kind of a know of how good Colorado is and how good Oregon is. But Colorado just kind of thumped them, and wasn't really too much to say other than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting game. Nebraska kind of dominated the first half, but they were down 13-0 at the half because they kept turning the ball over and making mistakes, which has kind of been the trademark of their program over the last decade or so. But 13-0 in the third quarter, and Nebraska was able to score and cut it 13-7, and you thought it might be a game, but then Colorado just kind of pulled away. Like you said, Sanders has been really impressive. Shedeur Sanders has been really impressive, moving up to the FBS level and not really skipping a beat. And Travis Hunter, again, impresses, playing both ways another week. I mean, I think it's fair to say he's a very special player and one of the few guys in Division One that could do that successfully right now. So Colorado's playing well. 2 games that, I mean, still pretty impressive what they've done since they went 1-11 last year and are pretty much turned over the whole roster. So strong start. Again, Colorado State, like you said, the game they should win this week, which College Game Day is going to that game, which is, I mean, I get it because they always go off the storyline or whatever, but I mean, that's not really going to be a competitive game in my opinion. Could be wrong, but I think the next few weeks we'll be able to see what Colorado is. I mean, Oregon, I think USC, Oregon State, like in 3 out of 4 weeks, it's going to be a difficult stretch for them. We'll see how they can compete against those teams.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely don't have a cupcake schedule. I know their win total prior to the year starting was like 3.5. So I didn't. I mean, obviously they're already 2 wins in, so they just need 2 more left on their schedule. So they should get that pretty easily as long as they keep playing the way they're playing. But yeah. All right, our next one is Oregon versus Texas Tech. This was actually a really good game to watch. Oregon had I think a 1-score lead at halftime. Then they kind of got blanked in the third quarter, didn't score. Texas Tech scored 2 touchdowns to take the lead, and then in the fourth quarter, kind of roles reversed, and Oregon scored 3 times, and they held Texas Tech to a field goal. So they ended up winning by 8. It was 38 to 30. Texas Tech has kind of had 2 tough games already this year. Their first one went in, I think it was double overtime. They ended up dropping that one, and then this one to a good Oregon team. So, they've had a bad end of the stick so far this year, but Oregon, again, racking up another win, so it's going to be good for their resume going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a bad beat. This is what makes the Scott Van Pelt show. I mean, you got Texas Tech leading with like a minute and a half to go, and they're, I think, like a 6.5-point underdog or maybe a 6-point underdog, something like that. And Oregon kicks a field goal to take a 1-point lead, and then Texas Tech has the ball around midfield, and the quarterback gets slung down, flings it to the Oregon guy, and he runs it back for a touchdown, and they kick the extra point and end up winning by 8 and covering. So that's why you don't bet right there. But this was a good game. Texas Tech's had 2 tough losses already to start the season, a double OT loss at Wyoming and then this game. So they're kind of snake bitten to start this year, but I still think they're going to have a pretty solid team, especially when they get into Big 12 play. They're definitely going to be tested from these first 2 games. So I'm expecting still a pretty solid season from Texas Tech and Oregon. I mean, they're right up there in the top of the Pac-12 with Bo Nix coming back for, I think this is his 5th year or 6th year, 5th year senior. So interested to see how they do. I mean, the top of the Pac-12 is going to be really fun to watch. So this is a great game that Oregon just found a way to win in the end.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Our next one, Wisconsin versus Washington State. I was thinking about it. I can't remember if we both thought Washington State was going to win, or if one of us thought Wisconsin was going to win. Do you remember from our last episode?
Yeah, I told you to pick Washington State when you with your betting. I was giving you my betting
That's
advice,
right.
and I told you to pick Washington State.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
you're welcome.
this was another good game. Washington State looks like they could have a good year again. Uh, Wisconsin, I kind of feel like is one of those teams that comes in the season a little overhyped, and then we kind of find out pretty quick how good they actually are. Which I don't think they played bad necessarily. I just think Washington State's a little bit better, and that's how it ended up being at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean Washington State has a solid team. Like I talked about, I think maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. I just think Washington State and Oregon State are going to play with a chip on their shoulder this year. They both have pretty veteran teams coming off of solid seasons last year and getting left behind as the only two remaining members of the Pac-12 going into next year. I mean, I think they're going to play with something to prove. I think it'd be really cool to see them play each other in the Pac-12 championship game in the last season of the Pac-12, but I don't think that's going to be able to happen just because of how strong it is. And Oregon State and Washington State play like next week. So that'll definitely be a good game next week. But Washington State played great. I mean, their quarterback, Cam Ward, transferred up with he transferred from Incarnate Word 2 years ago, and then the head coach at Incarnate Word's at Texas State now, I think. But I mean, he's a really great player, very slick, hard to tackle back in the backfield. And Washington State just has some solid football players. And with Wisconsin trying to break in a new offense with Phil Longo coming over from North Carolina, with Luke Fickell. I thought there'd be some growing pains there, and to their credit, they got the game to within 2 points and probably should have tied it on a questionable non-safety call. So Wisconsin fought their way back into it, but at the end of the day, Washington State's just a pretty veteran team this year, and they found a way to pull away at the end.
All right, Art. Going forward to week 3 of college football, our preview. We've got 5 games we're going to talk about. There's not really too many good games this upcoming week. It's kind of a blah week of college football. But our first one, obviously, we'll be tuning into is the Tennessee at Florida game. Tennessee originally opened up as like an 8.5-point favorite, and now it's down to 6.5, which you can take that with a grain of salt however you want to, but I don't think it really matters. The 8.5 to the 6.5. It's just kind of people playing the sports books and stuff. But the Swamp is a tough place to play. I talked about it the other day about we're 0-4 in the Swamp on September 16th, all the superstition type stuff. But then again, Tennessee quarterbacks to beat Florida in the Swamp have worn number 7 or 16. So Milton's obviously number 7, but I think the key for us to win this game is to kind of come out, fired up on defense, get some big stops, kind of contain their offense, and then, I'd like to see the offense get rolling early. Get Joe comfortable with, however he needs to get comfortable. I don't know if he needs to throw a bomb and get comfortable that way or throw some quick, slants and outs or anything like that. But the run game, I think, will definitely be a factor. If we can run the ball really well with our 3 guys, I think this is going to be a big game for Jalen Wright and Small. I think they both could have a really good game. Just I think they need to in order for us to be able to kind of open up the field a little bit. But I'd like to see us come out, run the ball heavy, and then take a deep shot downfield and see what happens. Catch it, whatever, if it's overthrown, whatever. But, then again, that will open back up the run play. So there's that. And then Milton's kind of been a little too comfortable in the pocket this year, I feel like, which, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing to do, but I think there's been several times where he could either step up in the pocket or roll out and gain several yards with his feet. Hendon was really good at that last year, so if he can get to doing that, we'll be in some serious business on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish Florida was favored, honestly. I just would feel better about it because it just feels like there's too many signs pointing to Tennessee. It's time for Tennessee to win this game. I mean, Tennessee's a better football team this year. Now, that doesn't mean the better football team doesn't always win. I mean, I'd say there's a ton of instances where the better football team doesn't win, but I just think Tennessee's a better team this year. I think they're deeper. I think they have a better defense. I think they have better skill players. It's just about executing and taking care of business. I mean, you talk about how the game starting fast. I'd love for them to because I mean they've been throwing those short screens and play action, stuff like that. They've been really setting it up for the first play of the game on Saturday to take a 75-yard deep shot. And if they could connect on something like that or just kind of deflate the stadium to start the game, that'd be huge. But I think for me, the keys are just, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, for the last 16 of the last 19 years, the team that has run for more yardage has won this game. And 2 of the 3 times that the team has run for more yards and lost was Tennessee, and both in the Swamp. In 2015 and 2017, Tennessee ran for more yards and still lost. So it's a pretty good sign when you can run for more yards than the other team in this game. So I think the strength of Tennessee's team this year, even if they really start clicking in the passing game, is running the ball. Like you said, Jalen Wright he's just a different running back. I mean, I think right now, in my opinion, he's a top 3 SEC running back. I mean, he can do it all. He reads the hole well. He's fast. He's shifty. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. If it was up to me, Jalen Wright would play 70% of the snaps in this game, and I'd split the other 2 backs for 15% just because I think that this is a game for him. I think he could have a huge game, and I think he's really the key to Tennessee winning. So, in my opinion, if Tennessee can run the ball and they can stop Florida from running, I mean, I think Tennessee wins. If not, you're going to be asking for trouble because you got to be able to move the ball on the ground so that those Florida athletes can't pin their ears back and come get after Joe. So if Tennessee can run the ball and Tennessee can stop the run, I like the chances. But we've been here before. Tennessee's been the better team a number of times over the last 20 years and haven't won there since 2003. So we'll see how it goes. I'm cautiously optimistic, but until I see it happen, it's going to be hard to believe it.
Yeah. All right, next one, LSU at Mississippi State. LSU is a 10-point favorite. I just haven't seen enough from LSU so far this year to think that they're 10 points better in Mississippi State. I do think they'll win the game. It might be by a touchdown, might be by less, but 10 points I think is a little much for this game, especially at Mississippi State, who also is not a terrible team by any means. So, I think LSU was way overhyped coming into the year. They got thumped by Florida State to start the year, and then they played Grambling this past week and beat them how they should. So I don't know how good they are, truthfully, but it's kind of a question: is Florida State as good as how they're looking, or is LSU a lot worse than everybody thought they were? I mean, they're obviously worse than people thought they were because they thought their quarterback was a Heisman candidate. They thought they were going to be a playoff team coming out the gate, and it's not looking that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida State's really strong, but I still feel like LSU is overrated going into the year. I mean, we talked about what they did last year. I mean, they had a great season, played in the SEC championship, but they got killed by Tennessee. They lost to A&M, who was pretty hapless for most of the year. They got blown out by Georgia. So, I mean, they're a strong team. They got a good quarterback. They got some athletes like they normally do, but I still think they're going to lose probably multiple games this year, maybe a couple more. I mean, I could see them losing this game. Mississippi State's really veteran. I think they start like 18 of 22 seniors. They're going to try to probably take some time off the clock. They've changed their offensive philosophy this year under Arnett, the new coach that's taken over for Leach, and they're running the ball a lot more. I think Will Rogers has like the lowest throw percentage in the league thus far. I think he's only thrown like 46 passes. So they're a totally different team. And LSU, I mean, they're strong. They can move the ball. I mean, they blew out Grambling. I mean, last week we said if Grambling beat LSU, then Brian Kelly should be fired. And so luckily he survived that. But at the end of the first quarter, it was like 14-10. I was keeping up with that game, and I was like, maybe I made some crazy prediction there. But LSU obviously ended up killing them. But I think LSU's got a pretty solid offense. I don't know how good their defense is, but we're going to see on Saturday because conference play, I mean, that's when the rubber starts to meet the road. So we'll see what happens. I agree with you. I expect LSU to win the game, but I think it's going to be a tight one.
Yeah, for sure. Next one is Kansas State at Missouri. I think Kansas State is ranked 15th right now. Both these teams are 2-0. Kansas State when I first saw it, they were a 5.5 point favorite. Now it's down to 4. I actually do expect Missouri to win this one. I think they've looked pretty decent so far this year. They're better than they were last year, and playing at home. Kansas State again, don't really know how good they are yet. So early in the season. We talk about the preseason rankings all the time. I don't know how true they are, other than maybe Georgia being the only legit one that should be ranked in the top 5, because Ohio State, Alabama, yeah, I guess you could say Florida State, but LSU, none of them have looked the part so far. So I do like Missouri in this one. I think they can kind of control the game, especially with the new rules with the running clock and everything, and take advantage of that.
See, I'm going to differ on this one a little bit. I like Kansas State. It's one of those teams I kind of like to watch. Since Kleiman's been there, I mean, they've been solid. I mean, last year winning the Big 12, giving Alabama a pretty good first half in the bowl game, which obviously that's like a moral victory. But Kansas State, I mean, they're a team that they have to really recruit well, develop and stuff to compete with the rest. And he's done a good job there. I think they're really fundamentally sound. I think they tackle really well. They run the ball well. And I don't know. Missouri just gives me some pause just because, I mean, both their games. I mean, you could say the same about Tennessee last week, but I mean, we've got the track record with Heupel. Missouri has struggled to get to 6-6 the last 3 years, and then they opened the season with a 28-10 win over South Dakota, who's, I mean, not that strong of an FCS program, and then they have to basically get a stop on their side of the field to keep MTSU from upsetting them on Saturday night in a 23-19 win, and when MTSU had just gotten destroyed by Alabama the week before. So obviously, you can't do the transitive property and compare games from different teams against other teams, but to me, it just points towards Kansas State, and I'm honestly surprised that line's coming down. I just think Kansas State's a better team. Now, granted, they're on the road, but a noon game, it's just, I don't know the environment's going to be that crazy. How much is the Missouri faithful believing in their team? I wouldn't be shocked if Missouri won, but I expect Kansas State to win just because I think it's a stronger program. I like their fundamentals better. I think if you watch them play, I mean, they just don't miss tackles. Like if they get their hands on you, they're going to get you down. So they're just a solid program, and just based off of the last couple of years, I would take Kansas State to win that game. But I'll definitely be tuned into it because that's one of the more intriguing matchups, like you said.
Mm-hmm. All right, our next one is South Carolina at Georgia. This is a 3:30 kickoff game. Georgia somehow is favored by originally 26.5 points. Now it's actually up to 27.5. I just don't see there's any way. I haven't seen enough from Georgia, even against these teams that have no business playing them, especially after watching South Carolina. Like, we're talking 4 touchdowns against a pretty good SEC opponent. I don't know. I think that's way too many points. Rattler has looked better than a lot of people. I mean, definitely better than you and I gave him credit for. A lot of other people haven't really given him much credit either. But week 1, he definitely had one of the better stat lines out of the quarterbacks in the country, and they just fell short. But they were playing a good North Carolina team. But I don't know. I feel like this one will be a lot closer than people think. Now, do I think South Carolina's going to win? Probably not, unless Georgia just ends up being not as good as what a lot of people think they are. But I could definitely see this one being, kind of a 7 to 14 point game. If South Carolina wins, it'll be by 1 score. But if they lose, I don't see it being by more than 2, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take South Carolina to win straight up.
There it is.
Just kidding. Could you imagine Beamer if South Carolina won this game? I mean, that YMCA swim coach would just be probably ripping his shirt off at midfield and beating his chest and doing the worm and stuff. That guy's an idiot. But I do expect this game to be competitive. I mean, I just don't see Georgia winning by 28 points against this team. I mean, South Carolina's offensive line is definitely a work in progress, to put it nicely, but Georgia has really, all they've done is capitalized off of Ball State and UT Martin's mistakes. I mean, again, you can point to the Tennessee game that we've talked about, but Georgia, with all this talent and all this stuff, has been ahead of UT Martin 17-0 at the half and tied with Ball State at 0 going to the second quarter. So, yes, they ended up blowing both those teams out, but all they did was basically just sit back on defense and wait for those teams to make a mistake. And so South Carolina very well may do the same thing. I mean, if they let if the offensive line runs the swinging gate again and lets Rattler get hit 14 times, I mean, he might fumble on a couple of them and throw a pick 6 on another, and Georgia might blow them out. But I just don't see that happening. I mean, even though it is Georgia, they've won the national championship 2 years in a row. South Carolina has kind of struggled to find their footing for the early part of the last couple of seasons. I feel like this game's going to be competitive for a while, maybe even into the fourth quarter. Georgia at some point having to replace all those defensive players is going to catch up to them. And Carson Beck, to me, he hasn't looked like the kind of quarterback that is going to be able to replicate what Bennett's done. So we'll see. I would expect this to be well within 28 points, but when that is typically the case, I usually see a 49-7 game. So that's why you don't bet. And I don't see Georgia winning this game by 28. And I think Georgia's still a solid team. I think they're still the best team in the SEC right now. But I don't think they're as good right now as they've been the last 2 years. So I think South Carolina maybe gives them a test and is able to do a couple things. And I mean, for the sake of watching it, I hope it's a competitive game. But we'll see.
Yeah, I hope your prediction on it doesn't backfire like you think it will. But for once, I would.
Don't worry, they do all the time.
Next one, BYU at Arkansas. Arkansas is a 10-point favorite. I think Arkansas will win. Again, I don't really know too much about BYU this year. I know they lost. What's that dude's name that's playing for the Rams right now? Who's lighting it up?
Pakua or something like that.
Yeah, I know he was kind of their stud guy last year. I think Arkansas will win. They've looked pretty good so far this year. A little bit better than I thought they were going to look going into the year. But I just don't know too much about BYU. I feel like a lot of times they're kind of overhyped, and then when they play these bigger name schools, they kind of get hit in the mouth. So I'm going to ride with Arkansas and to cover the points on this one.
Yeah, I mean, haven't seen too much of BYU. I know they shut out Sam Houston in the first week 14-0, and then this past week they played on like BYU TV or something and beat Southern Utah 36-14, I believe, or maybe 46-14. I can't remember, but usually always solid. I mean, they've got some pretty strong interior linemen on both sides of the ball, and they've got some solid athletes. But I think Arkansas is probably a little ahead of them right now, while BYU's kind of reloading, trying to find their foot in the Big 12. Obviously, we know Arkansas has KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, some pretty solid skill players around them. And the game is in Arkansas, where they've been pretty solid the last few years under Pittman. So I think it'll be competitive. I'd say that I would expect Arkansas to probably cover it right around that number, maybe by 17, or if they score a late touchdown or take control in the fourth quarter or something. I expect this to definitely be competitive for a bit, but Arkansas at home, I think it'll probably just be too much this week.
All right, well, that wraps it up for college football for this episode. Next, we'll be talking about a recap of the week 1 in the NFL. Our first game we're going to talk about is the Lions at Chiefs, which was the first game of the year, Thursday night football. We were texting our group chat, and I told y'all if Travis Kelce didn't play, I got the Lions winning, and, he didn't end up playing. Lions won. Just kind of a surprising win, even though I thought they would win. The Chiefs just didn't play very good. I mean, it's kind of hard when you lose a guy like Kelce, who's pretty much their number one wide receiver, even though he plays tight end. But him and Mahomes have that special connection. He's his safety blanket. So, but the Lions did look good. Their defense is still improving every year. Aiden Hutchinson has kind of played the part. They scored big on drafting him when they did. I love their coach. I love Andy Reid too. So. I wouldn't have been mad either way that one went, but for betting purposes, I'm glad the Lions won. But I do see the Chiefs bouncing back this week. They should get Kelce back, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game basically comes down to Kelce didn't play, so the Chiefs didn't win. I mean, it's hard to say that one player means that much, but he does for them. I mean, those targets were going to Tony and Moore and other people, where Kelce gets probably at least 8 to 10 targets a game. So, I mean, That's the difference, especially in the red zone, a guy that's just kind of unguardable, huge and physical like that. And just you can't say that he wasn't just a huge factor in the Chiefs not finding a way to win. But the Lions look strong. They move the ball well. Got some solid skill players with St. Brown and Gibbs. And they look strong. So like the way they played. Goff's really rounding into a pretty solid NFL quarterback, finding his footing there, and love Dan Campbell. So that was a great opening game for the NFL season. Even if you're just a casual NFL fan like me, like that was a great game to watch. So, um, like you said,
Hmm.
you hit on it, but I just think with Kelsey, the Chiefs probably win that game. But credit to the Lions for going in there and getting it done.
Yeah. All right, next one is Steelers versus 49ers. I thought Steelers were going to win this one at home to open up the year. They just didn't really look good in any facet of the game. They had one good drive right before halftime where they put up 7, and then kind of gave me some false hope to think they were going to come out in the second half and um, fight and try to come back and win it. But really, the only good thing about that game was T.J. Watt's play. He had 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 recovery. He had 9 quarterback pressures. I think he had 5 total tackles. But I think me personally, I think he's the best defensive player in the league. And the only other one I would say could give him a run for his money is Aaron Donald, as far as when they play and when they don't play. Um, but I don't know. We ran the ball 14 times. Najee had 6 carries. Jalen Warren had 8. Not kind of what I thought was going to happen going into the year. Cam Hayward got hurt. He's going to be on the IR for a while. And then Deontay Johnson also got hurt. He's going to be out like 4 weeks. I don't know if they're going to put him on IR or not. I don't think so because, maybe he'll come back in 3. But, Kenny didn't look good really at all other than that one drive. He was just kind of missing throws. So I don't know. I mean, 49ers, obviously, they look like they're one of the better teams in the league, but we definitely didn't help them out and give them any type of test for a week 1 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers are just solid. I mean, they have been for the last few years, just kind of a blah team, but they go 13-4, 14-3. Just great coaching, obviously, with Shanahan, and you give him another weapon fully healthy like McCaffrey, and their offense is just almost unfair. I mean, Debo really didn't do much. I mean, Ayuk caught a couple touchdowns. McCaffrey had a long touchdown. Purdy looks like a pretty solid quarterback. It's just so funny that those guys that are drafted like at the very end of the draft end up being like the studs, like the guys that are
Mm-hmm.
fifth year quarterbacks in college that have been through all the wars and watched all the film and are just solid, end up being the guys that are Hall of Famers. But I mean, obviously that's a long way to go for him, but he just looks like a solid player, and just leads the offense well and manages the game and makes solid throws. So he had a great game. And the 49ers, I mean, that's a tough team to open up with, especially with a team like the Steelers who are still super young. I mean, Pickett was that his like 13th or 14th career start, and
Mm-hmm.
Pickens is a young receiver, and Johnson's still a young receiver, and Austin's a young receiver, and breaking in new offensive linemen. And even though the Steelers defense is veteran and really good, it's hard to ask them to hold that 49ers team to less than 7 points to win that game. So week 1 in the NFL isn't the be all end all. I think the Steelers will still be fine, but the 49ers, I mean, they look like they're going to be right there at the end again.
Yeah, they as long as they stay injury free, they definitely can be. Our next one was the Browns versus the Bengals. I think this one kind of surprised some people for some reason. I kind of had this one as a toss-up one, just because I know how much the Bengals lost on defense going into this year. And it definitely showed. There wasn't really anything exciting about this game. Like Burrow, he had 82 yards passing, and Watson had like 150. So nothing too exciting there. Chubb, I know he ran for 100 yards on like 16 touches. One thing I did think was interesting though is I think he had 17 attempts or 16 attempts, and then Jerome Ford, his rookie running back for them, he had 15 attempts. Um, but week 1, don't really know too much. I think the Bengals will bounce back this week, and the Steelers play the Browns, so hopefully the Steelers can bounce back against them. But not too much to say about it. I wouldn't worry if I'm either fan base going forward. I think both of them will be good. Like the AFC North is obviously one of the tougher divisions. As long as the Steelers and Browns kind of pan out how people think they will. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be worried one way or another for either fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it. We knew the Bengals defense might take a step back, but it was surprising that their offense struggled as much as it did. It just looked like they were off the whole day. Granted, the weather was pretty terrible. I mean, it looked like it was raining for the majority of the game, and it was really, I mean, I think it was like a 3-0 or 7-0 game for a good, or 10-0. I think maybe the Browns were up for a good majority of the game, and
Hmm.
just really couldn't get anything going. So again, week one doesn't really mean too much. I mean, you can fix your season pretty quick, just get them things ironed out. But impressed by the Browns taking care of business like they did, and see if the Bengals can respond this week.
All right, next one was Dolphins versus Chargers. This was one of the better games to watch. If you weren't watching Red Zone or if you were watching football on Sunday, I think it was the highest scoring game throughout the league. I think the final score was 36-34. Tua had an unreal game. He threw for like 470 yards, and Tyreek Hill, I think he had like 10 or 11 receptions, and I know he had over 200 yards receiving and like 2 touchdowns. So if you have either of those dudes in fantasy, you were doing pretty well that week. And then Eckler, I know he rushed for over 100 yards. He had a touchdown, and it was just kind of a back and forth type game, which kind of expected that going into it. I feel like every game the Chargers played last year against another good offense, that's kind of how it went, which is kind of surprising because the Chargers defense isn't bad by any means. But, again, if I'm a Chargers fan, I wouldn't really be too worried about it. If I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm ecstatic right now because, Tua's kind of picking up where he looked like he had some flashes last year, and then, he had some games where he didn't look so good. So hopefully he can stay, kind of in the mode he's in. But, I think the Chargers can bounce back this next week. And, like you said, first week in the NFL, can't, base too much off that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Tua looked really strong. I think he was only like 50 yards off of breaking Dan Marino's single game record. So really strong performance when you can say you even got close to that. Um, so and like you said, if you have Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle in fantasy this year, I mean, you're going to be hitting the jackpot because Tyreek Hill had like 50 points this week in PPR league. So pretty ridiculous showing from him, and Waddle not too shabby with a 20-point week himself. So two strong targets to throw to. Tua is willing to throw that ball all over the place, and the Chargers, it just kind of seemed like the story of their season the last couple of years. Like they've been like right there on the cusp of making the playoffs, right there on the cusp of finishing games. Their offense is certainly strong enough to do it, but then they just find a way to lose games at the end. So, I mean, two exciting teams to watch. I think both of them are in store for plenty of ups and downs this season, but this was probably definitely the game of the weekend to start.
All right, our next one was Raiders versus Broncos. This one kind of went about how I thought it was going to go. I thought it was going to be a close game. Um, I feel like if in that division, a lot of the games are close unless the Chiefs and the Chargers are playing each other. But if they're playing one of these other two teams with the Raiders and Broncos, it's normally pretty close. Um, I don't know, not too much to say about it. Raiders got the win; they won by one. Garoppolo kind of played his typical game where he's just kind of a game manager. I think the surprising thing was how much he targeted Jacoby Myers. I think he had like 10 catches and 2 touchdowns. They're only 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. I don't think it's panic mode necessarily yet for the Broncos, but it almost seems like they're picking up kind of where they left off last year, and looking to have a bounce back year from Wilson this year, especially with Sean Payton coming in. And so I don't know, but I wouldn't panic just yet. But you got to be a little worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, I think both these teams are teams that aren't going to factor into the race or the playoffs this year. I mean, it's crazy to say that about a Russell Wilson team for the second year in a row, but there's just something off there. I mean, I don't know what's happened because in Seattle, I mean, the guy was a magician, running the ball, scrambling around, throwing deep shots. And yeah, the Seahawks have some solid weapons, but you figure he was part of that too. So kind of befuddling. But like you said, I mean, game one, really close contest, a division game, and both these teams are just teams we're going to have to watch this year and see what kind of playmakers develop, what rookies start to stand out, and and how do they build towards the future, because it just doesn't seem like these two teams are going to be teams that are going to factor this year, in my opinion. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. All right, next one was Bills versus Jets. This, was kind of building up to be a really good game to watch. And, first drive, Rodgers gets hurt out for the year, torn Achilles. So, I'm big into watching Hard Knocks. I'm pretty sure you watch it too, but a lot of people watch it. And, Rodgers, he kind of made the show, to be honest with you, this season. Just a completely different dude than the media kind of makes him out to be. Um, I know for people like you that aren't necessarily like have a team in the NFL or anything, kind of follow players, and I know you were looking forward to watching him play this year. I was too. Just uh, I always kind of enjoy watching him play, but with that Jets team going in, I honestly felt like he could have like a Brady going to Tampa type of season. Had a good defense. Probably the best wide receiver he's had, other than Devontae Adams. And then he has Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook at running back. And then he brought Lazard, brought Cobb. He had all the pieces working for him, and then just kind of didn't go his way, obviously. But they somehow ended up winning the game. Zach Wilson stepped in. I don't know if it's because the Bills' game plan was not for him, but he played pretty decent and ended up going to overtime. And Josh Allen is 0-4 in overtime games in his life, which I don't know if that's necessarily because he doesn't get the ball first all the time, but got the ball first this time, punted the ball, and Jets walk it off on a punt return for a touchdown, which is just a bizarre ending. And what a way to cap off a night for them, especially after losing Rodgers so early.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that was kind of the one of the things I was looking forward to this season, especially not having an NFL team, was watching Rodgers play. So it stinks. I mean, I think it stinks for anybody who's a casual fan of NFL, because obviously that was one of the biggest storylines, and for him to go down on like the fourth play of the season, I mean, it's pretty awful. But I just saw his Instagram post today, and it doesn't seem like he's planning on retiring. I saw that he commented, "I'll be back better than ever." So hopefully that's the case, because I want to see him play a game or play a season with that
that's
team.
Encouraging, because I know a lot
Pretty
of people are
solid
thinking
team
that he
overall.
might
And
hang it up after that.
like you said, an interesting way for an NFL game to end with a punt return for a TD. But yeah, just a really fitting game to cap off the week of NFL Week 1.
All right, moving on to Week
Go
2
ahead.
of the NFL. Preview of the game coming up. We have the Vikings at Eagles on Thursday night. Looks like Eagles might be without Kenneth Gainwell, who looked kind of like to be their RB1, which was a complete surprise considering they got Swift in free agency. Eagles originally opened up as a 7.5-point favorite, but now they're only a 6-point favorite. They kind of struggled against the Patriots in Week 1, and the Vikings didn't necessarily look too great against the Bucs in Week 1 either. But I think it's going to be an upset. I think the Vikings are going to find a way to win. I know Kirk Cousins doesn't typically play good in prime time or playoffs, but I've just got a weird feeling about this one that they're going to hand the Eagles a nail on this week.
What you said, you think the Vikings are going to win the game?
Yeah. Bold prediction, but that's just what I think.
Okay. Well, I definitely can see. I mean, these these Thursday night games are really wonky. I mean, the crazy stuff happens all the time. So, wouldn't be the craziest thing ever. But I think the Eagles probably find a way to win at home. But I could see this being a back and forth game. I mean, two teams that really have strong offenses. The Vikings really didn't play up to their standard in the first week, so I could see, like you said, them having a strong game. But I think the Eagles probably win a close one. But these Thursday night games are impossible to predict.
Yeah. All right, next one is Ravens at Bengals. Bengals are favored by 3. I like to see the Bengals. I don't like to see it, but I think the Bengals are going to win this one. Kind of have a bounce back week. Get back in the division race, be 1-1, make the Ravens 1-1, and then hopefully the Steelers handle the Browns and everybody in the division is 1-1. But Burrow just probably had probably his worst game of his career he might ever have. I mean, 82 passing yards is kind of comical. So hopefully they can figure some things out on defense because the Ravens obviously. I think they'll play kind of a similar game plan as what the Browns did against them, run heavy. I know they lost Dobbins to a season-ending injury again, but that running back room is kind of by committee for the most part anyway. But I think it'll be close. These division games are typically always close, but I think the Bengals will win.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know it hurts your heart, but Burrow is another one of the quarterbacks I like to watch. I mean, I like just kind of intriguing story all around, and just a solid player. So I think at home they win, especially in this. They can't start 0-2 in the division, and I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like they've kind of maybe had similar to the Steelers had the Ravens number at least at home maybe since Burrow's been the QB there. So I like the Bengals to find a way to win this game and maybe get it clicking a little bit.
All right, next one is Chiefs at Jaguars. Chiefs are favored by 3. Assuming Travis Kelce plays this week, which I think right now he is slated to do so, I think they win. I do think they'll cover to the 3. I would say they probably win by at least a touchdown. Just, I don't know. Week 1, again, can't tell too much from it, but there's no way they have that type of performance again, especially if Kelce plays. And, Jaguars didn't look the best in week 1 either. So I think the Chiefs will get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Kelce plays, I think the Chiefs win. I don't see them starting 0-2. I mean, this is a rematch of the divisional round last year, which was a pretty competitive game. But
Yeah.
I can see it being a shootout. I could see them both moving the ball pretty successfully. But I think that, especially like we said, if Kelce plays, I think the Chiefs will find a way to win just because they can't start 0-2. I mean, they can, and they'd be fine. But I think they'll find a way to squeak this one out, even though it's going to be a pretty tough game. I think they'll find a way to win.
Yeah. All right, next one is Chargers at Titans. Chargers are favored by 3. I'd like to see the Chargers also have a bounce back game. A lot of these games we're talking about teams that kind of expected to be 1-0 going into week 2, but I see them having a bounce back week. I just don't think the Titans can score points with them. They're a very run heavy offense. They ride Henry until the wheels fall off. But if the Chargers play anything like they did against the Dolphins, I think they could win by 2 scores for sure. But I don't know if that'll necessarily happen. But I do see them winning and covering the 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, like I've talked about, I just feel like the NFL is impossible to predict. I think this is one of those games that kind of give some credence to that because I think the Titans. I mean, I think the Chargers are definitely the better team, without a doubt. I think more talented team, but the Titans, the last few years, especially with Vrabel, have just found a way to grind these games out and make them ugly and win these type of games. So even though I want the Chargers to win, I feel like the Titans are going to find a way. I don't know, just something about them. I mean, leaning on that run game, playing defense, hitting a few deep downfield shots, and the Chargers just having that inability to finish some games over the last couple of years, like we talked about. Just I don't know. I feel like the Titans, for some reason, I feel like the Titans are going to win. But like I said, pretty impossible to predict. But these are just the type of games over the last couple of years that the Titans have somehow, even though they don't seem like they're the better team, have found a way to win. So I'm going to take the Titans and hope that I'm wrong.
There we go. We got some mixed matches here. All right, next one is Jets at Cowboys. Don't really know too much about how this one's going to go. Cowboys are going to have a full week of planning for Zach Wilson instead of Aaron Rodgers. Cowboys arguably look the best out of everybody in week 1, but, who's to say that isn't because the Giants played so terribly. But, I don't know, their defense looked really good. Kind of did what they wanted on offense. I think this will be a lot. I think Dallas is favored by 8.5. I think that's a little much, even with Wilson at quarterback. I mean, it's NFL. I mean, I think really anything over 4 is kind of a stretch unless it's, the Chiefs playing Houston or something like that. But, 2 competitive teams, especially when the defenses are both good, I think that's a lot of points. I do think the Cowboys will win, but I don't know if they cover that 8.5, though. It seems like a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like those 2-score spreads in the NFL ever. So the Cowboys look great, but the Giants played terrible. I think the Cowboys are really good. I always think the last few years they've been a lot better than they've been given credit for, even though with their early playoff exits. I mean, they got a solid squad. So even though the Jets defense is strong, I mean, how many times are they going to have to be on the field and and get stops for the Cowboys or for the Jets to be in this game. I don't know. I'd like to see what Wilson can do. I mean, I'd like to see if the Jets can stay competitive in that division, but just for some reason it feels like maybe they can't. But we'll see. I mean, he got it done this past week. He made enough plays to keep him in that game so they could have that walk-off punt return. So we'll see what happens. But like you said, I expect the Cowboys to win just because the NFL it'll probably be within one score. But I think the Cowboys win this game.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, our last one is Monday Night Football, Browns at Steelers. Browns are favored by 2.5 points. I would love for this season. I would love to see the Steelers bounce back this week and get a W at home. I think we talked about earlier. I think they've won their last 20 Monday night games at home, dating back to 1991, which is a bizarre stat. I mean, obviously you don't play too many Monday night games in a year, or at home for that matter. But that's pretty wild. I don't know. I think these teams are kind of evenly matched, but being at home, night game, I can't see us playing any worse than we did this past week. So I think we will get the win. It might be me being a little biased, but if we can run the ball, if Kenny has even just a hair better of a game throwing the ball, I think we'll be able to move the ball a lot easier down the field and kind of open it up a little bit. But I don't know. I think our defense will kind of hold it down for us as long as Watt has a good game. Secondary, they can't look any worse than they did this past week. Just I don't know. It looked like they almost game planned for the wrong stuff. So, but I like the Steelers to win straight up in this one.
Yeah, I think the Steelers win too. I mean, being at home, getting the Browns at home, and the Browns coming off the win, maybe the Browns won't have as much of a sense of urgency. I think the Steelers don't want to start 0-2, and just a bounce back game. I mean, I think that they're going to lean a lot more heavily on the running game. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that they played a whole game with Harris only getting 6 carries. Maybe that'll open up the play action pass, and Pickett will settle in a little bit and hit some of his open targets, and the defense will do their job like they normally do. Again, the 49ers, even for the Steelers defense, is a tough offense to expect them to hold really under 20 points or 24 points just because the 49ers are so strong. So I expect the Steelers to kind of get their bearings this week and probably win a low-scoring defensive game. But I see the Steelers winning this game one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be close. Whichever way it goes, it'll be a close game, I think. A lot of times the division matchups are, but that home factor Monday night, I think it plays a big role in the outcome of this game. But like you said, that's why they play a game. So we'll see on Monday night how that one turns out. But I believe that is all we have for this one. Follow and subscribe to our social media, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube. You can check us out on Spotify for audio or YouTube for video. TikTok, we put out some clips, and Instagram, we kind of keep you updated when our episodes are dropping. So make sure you follow and subscribe all of those platforms for us, and tune in next time.